Welcome, everyone, to the January 28th, 2019 meeting of the Delaware County Board of Commissioners. I am Barb Lewis, President. To my left is Jeff Benton, our Vice President, and fellow Commissioner Gary Merrill. To my right, Mike Fromer, our Administrator, and Jennifer Walraven, our Clerk. Would you please join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We can begin.
Resolution number 19-67, in the matter of approving electronic record of proceedings from regular meeting held January 24th, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion vote.
Vote on motion 19-67. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
We do not have any public comment today, so that brings us to item number 3, resolution number 19-68. In the matter of approving purchase orders that announce certificates and payments of warrants in batch number CM APR 0125 and memo transfers in batch number MT APR 0125.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion vote.
Vote on motion 19-68. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-69, in the matter of approving travel expense request.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion vote.
Vote on motion 19-69. Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-70, in the matter of canceling the Delaware County Commissioners' session scheduled for Thursday, February 14th, 2019 at 9:30 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, whoops. Discussion vote.
Vote on motion 19-70. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-71, in the matter of approving the DKMM County Recycling and Litter Prevention Office Program Status Report for the second half of 2018.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Jennifer Way Young, Keep Delaware County Beautiful, Delaware General Health District. The last half of 2018, I provided 15 recycling presentations to more than 400 Delaware County and city students, as well as some Cub Scouts. I attended Berlin and Concord Township Fire Station open houses and provided recycling information and spoke one-on-one with residents there. We had our Household Hazardous Waste Drop-Off Day. We had 423 cars and collected more than 40,000 pounds of material that morning. We had the Olentangy River Sweep in August and collected 1,600 pounds of trash. Scioto River Sweep was held in September, and we collected 700 pounds from the Scioto. We had a downtown graffiti removal and litter cleanup with Honda volunteers, and that was with the Delaware General Health District. So we had some staff helping out with that, as well as Main Street, Delaware. And we collected another 225 pounds of litter, as well as doing some graffiti removal. And then finally, I wanted to report that the Senior Citizen Appliance and Electronic Pickup, final numbers, we provided service to 104 households, collected 78 televisions, 56 various kinds of electronic from small to large, and collected 7,500 pounds of appliances, and that was with the help of SourcePoint.
Wow. Questions? I just wondered how that compared to last year.
A few more. Weight-wise, the appliances seem to be down, but there's still a lot of televisions out there that our seniors want collected. So it's still very popular. So we're hoping that we'll be able to continue that this year.
Okay, great. Vote.
Vote on motion 19-71. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-72, in the matter of approving a services agreement between Delaware County Board of Commissioners and Air Force One for full-service HVAC.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Good morning, John Melvin, Director of Facilities. This maintenance agreement is for the, what we refer to as the Liebert units, commonly found in the data center equipment rooms where we need a little bit higher control of the humidity levels and things like that. So we're working on getting all our service agreements onto this new short form, so we'll be bringing price and more of these back before you too as well.
I'm always amused at the name Air Force One. But
Yes.
I guess it
I
has to
know.
force an air to the system. So it's like a defensive contractor.
Yeah.
Yep.
Any other questions? Vote.
Vote on motion 19-72. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye. Thank you, John.
Resolution number 19-73, in the matter of certifying to the county auditor sanitary sewer capacity charges for 4078 Rutherford Road, Powell, Ohio 43065.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Morning Commissioners, Tiffany Mag, Director of Environmental Services. This is for one property located on Rutherford Road near Sawmill Parkway to have their tap fee put on their taxes for a period of 10 years.
Okay, vote.
Vote on motion 19-73. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Item number 9 is going to be pulled from today's agenda, and it's not time to start number 10, so we are on administrator report.
I have nothing to report this morning.
Oh, my gosh.
We got 9 minutes to kill.
Aye. Yeah. Commissioner Merrill.
Okey dokey. I'm not going to kill the 9 minutes, but I'll start it. We attended Commissioner Benton and I attended the legislative meeting Friday. Andy Brennan, Rick Carfagna were represented there, and they're very, very good about attending these monthly meetings at Source Point at generally 2 o'clock, and we've said a number of times, taking time away to kind of update different agencies in our county that have questions, and the report's always very helpful, and appreciate very much them taking the time to do that. I won't go into details about what was discussed, but I'm debating whether I mentioned the Ohio Health Breakfast this morning, or I'll let you, Commissioner Benton, because I know it's on your list.
It would be on my list,
But
yes.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to pass the baton to you.
All right.
That's all I have.
The three of us did attend an Ohio Health breakfast this morning, where it was very interesting. They've got a very unique, novel, new approach, strategy to healthcare. It could potentially be a big issue. What they're trying to address strategically is the difference between an emergency room visit and a hospital stay, kind of the in-between need, gap, whatever, because emergency rooms, urgent care, primary care is much, much less expensive than a hospital stay, but there's nothing in between, and a lot of events, activities really don't need a hospital, but they need more than primary care, and can be in what they're calling a short stay program for a period of hours or maybe a day or two. And it's significantly less expensive because they don't have to provide all the infrastructure or very expensive infrastructure of a hospital. So it's a novel concept that they're going to roll out in 2 days.
12 rooms.
Yeah, 12 rooms here at the Ohio Health campus on Polaris Boulevard. And, they're looking to expand it, depending on how it goes, but they're looking to expand it throughout their network, and you can expect others to pick it up because, they're trying to lower the cost of healthcare broadly, and with this strategic initiative to address this gap between relatively inexpensive primary care, urgent care facilities and very expensive hospital stays, it looks very promising. It was a very interesting presentation. Ohio Health executives were there to talk about it, and they've been working on this for several years, actually. So I think it'll be very interesting to see that go forward.
Starts end of the month.
Starts in 2 days. Yeah.
And the other thing that was discussed, was brought up, whereas in a typical hospital room, it's really one patient per day, really occupancy would be less than that because not always going to be used. Because of this scenario, a room could be used more than once, twice a day, because you may be talking 12 hours for one patient. Clean up the room, it could be used again. So it creates more efficiencies at a lower cost, so that's the goal.
Well, I think too, with caretakers, so often, it's good for not only the patient, but it's good for the caretaker,
Good point,
because
too.
people are released from the hospital pretty quickly, and that puts a lot of stress on a caretaker, making certain that the patient, the loved one, is being cared for properly. And so I thought, boy.
Locally.
Yes.
They'll stay
and
local.
locally, right,
Versus
exactly.
going to a Riverside or wherever further away.
Right, yeah.
So again, congratulations, hats off to Ohio Health.
Yes.
for their work on this, and it'll be interesting to follow it
Yes.
in the weeks to come, or the years to come, really. Just one other thing, we have the OSU Extension Office luncheon, our annual luncheon with the Extension Office on Wednesday. It's always good to hear what's going on with our friends at the Extension Office, and look forward to that. Ken Stiverson's going to be providing the barbecue.
Again.
Yeah,
Oh, boy, good, good.
that's all I got.
And I just wanted to call our attention to Tom Price receiving the Ohio Cattlemen's Association Industry Service Award during their annual banquet on January 12th. And Tom he received a standing ovation. Tom is owner of Price Farm Organics, and it says that as chairman of the Ohio Soil and Water Conservation Commission in 2018, Price was front and center in the contentious and political debate over whether 8 sub-watersheds in the Lake Erie watershed should be declared distressed, as ordered by former Governor John Kasich. In accepting the award, Price, who serves also in many other leadership roles, including the Ohio Exposition Commission, characteristically said the real recognition should go to many others. Now, does that sound like
It
Tom
does sound like
Price?
Tom, doesn't it?
That's vintage, yeah, Tom Price. And he said there were some rock stars out there who really helped me out, adding the issue is still on the front burner. On a scale of 1 to 10, we're probably at a 3 or 4, and there's a lot more that needs to be done. So congratulations to Tom on that.
Yeah?
You got 3 more minutes. Yeah. We can't start the hearing till 9:45 we have today, so we got,
Right.
you want to recess, or
Who else wants to help us out?
we can recess for 3 minutes?
Yes, I guess we will recess. We'll recess until 9:45. And here comes Tom.
Okay. Reconvene.
You to reconvene?
Yeah, I
I
said,
think you said go
I
ahead.
think he wanted me to wait.
I think you said go ahead.
Oh, okay, yes, yes. We'll reconvene now?
Resolution number 19-74, the 945 public hearing number 2 for consideration of levying the tax upon motor vehicle registration authorized under Ohio Revised Code Section 4504.24.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion, vote.
Vote on motion 19-74. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Resolution number 19-75, in the matter of approving for a specific occurrence a suspension of Rule 3, speaker registration, Rule 4, limitations, and Rule 7, public comment procedures from the rules governing public comment before the Board of County Commissioners of Delaware County, Ohio.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Vote.
Vote on motion 19-75. Mrs. Lewis?
Aye.
Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Okay. Engineer Bowserman.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Chris Boserman, County Engineer. I intend to spare you the burden of sitting through the same presentation that I shared with you on Thursday at our public hearing, but I hope that was helpful. And if there are any information you want to go back over, Rob's queuing up that presentation that we can pull up any of those slides or any specifics that you might feel are necessary. I would just like to hit the high points of the request that's before you. We are requesting, under new authority granted by the Ohio Legislature in 2017 as part of the state transportation budget, that you increase the fee for motor vehicle registrations for vehicles registered in Delaware County by $5. And the authority granted you is in $5 increments. So the amount of the increase is not subject to change or modification. You have authority to deal with $5 or none. So we're requesting a $5 increase, and again, it would apply to all vehicles that are registered in Delaware County, and would begin to be collected in 2020, and we project there'll be about 220,000 vehicles in the county at that point, which would yield a tax revenue of $1.1 million as a result of that annually. That money will be used for several sources that I detailed for you previously, primarily to address the needs to maintain and operate the transportation system. We've made very significant contributions, largely due to your board's consent and action. We've made tremendous improvements to our transportation system. We've expanded the system. We've created additional capacity, and we have a lot more to do. You'll note that we have a $120 million 5-year capital plan for improvements and expansion to the system. Where we are not keeping up is on the maintenance of those improvements that we're making. And the revenues for capital improvements are separate from the revenues for maintenance. Maintenance comes from gas tax and motor vehicle registration fees. And largely, the capital side of things has come from the sales tax revenue, and we've been able to leverage a large amount of grant money using that revenue. But that's not ongoing for maintaining the system. And so primarily, the reason we're here to ask you for this increase is to maintain the system and the expanding system that we have. Since the permissive license fee was at last increased in 1988. Again, 1988 was the last time we dealt with this issue as a county. Since that time, our population has increased from about 60,000 people to over 200,000 people. The square footage of pavement that we've maintained, that we now maintain, has increased by over 30%. The cost of materials to provide those maintenance services has more than tripled in that period of time. And so I think it's good that we've been able to manage to the extent that we have during that time, but the revenues are not increasing, but the demands are increasing in a tremendous way, and we have to protect the investment that we're making in our transportation system as we expand it. That's the primary function of what I'm asking you about today. This revenue also will give us the ability to partner, the expanded ability to partner with our other local government partners and state government partners on projects. So many of our projects are not confined to one jurisdiction. They cross the boundaries between state responsibility, city responsibility, village responsibility, township responsibility. And so being able to be a good partner and pay for our share of those kind of improvements is important. It's something we've done to date, but this will give us an expanded ability to do that. You'll note that, you'll recall that we have a program in place to try to leverage more grant funding from outside of the county to bring that money back into the county by matching local government grant applications. We currently match 1-for-1 at up to $50,000. So if a township puts in $50,000 of local money into a grant application, the county will put in $50 also if it's a transportation project. We're proposing to expand that. I'll bring you a detailed proposal, but to give you an idea of what we're looking at there, to help bring some definition to that. We currently match 1-to-1. We're looking at a 2-to-1 match to try to help local governments. One of the things we're hearing from our local government partners is they just don't have the local funds to commit toward a grant application. And so if we could do that on a 2-to-1 basis and increase our $50,000 up to $75,000, for example, would have about $175,000 additional impact on our commitment to these projects. It's about 16% of the money that we're talking about being generated by this funding source that we're talking about today. So certainly I'll be bringing that back to you. I hesitate to formalize that as part of the action your board will take, because I think that's the kind of program that needs to be changed and modified from time to time. And so we need to have the flexibility to expand that or decrease that based on what kind of funding applications entities are making and what the availability of those grants are. So I'd like to preserve that kind of flexibility. But I hope the local government partners that are here in the room or are listening to this, or who even aren't, would say that we've been a really good partner to date. One of the things that my office has tried to do with your board's support is really be a good partner to our local government partners and understand that from the public standpoint, they don't necessarily understand or care much whether it's a township road or a city street or a state route or a county road, that we're in the business of providing transportation services to the community that we serve. And we each have statutory responsibilities in that we have to be respectful of, obviously. But we want to continue to be good partners, and I think we've done that, and this will enhance our ability to do that moving forward. So the other opportunity this creates for us is it could result in our ability to commit more funding to the TID, our Transportation Improvement District, for a specific project or for in an ongoing basis to expedite projects time-wise and to do them in a more cost-effective manner than we could do otherwise. And so I'm committed to be innovative about how this funding is used to accomplish those kind of goals as well. So with that, I am here to ask your board to take action to approve the $5 permissive, and would answer any questions you have and look forward to any other public comment on the matter.
Questions from the board right now?
Yeah, I did have one question, and we touched on it Thursday, and that is that the townships and the various jurisdictions have the ability to enact a $5
Yes.
permissive fee on top of the states. And I think 7 or 8 of the townships have done that.
Yes.
City of Delaware has done it, as I understand it, and I think Powell. Anyway, that is a source of additional funding for those townships or other jurisdictions that have not enacted the $5 permissive fee, that they could on their own.
Yeah, right now, excuse me, get my bottle of water here. The city of Delaware, for instance, and city of Westerville, the city of Powell, each has 2 $5 increments already in place. I don't believe there's another $5 available to them. There are a number of townships that have not enacted a $5 that is available to them. And understandably, you know, a township with a population of a couple thousand residents in the northern part of our county, with generally the number of registered vehicles tracks closely with the population. There's about 1 registered vehicle per person. And so, you know, a 2,000 population rural township, $5 doesn't generate very much money for their specific use. I'm sure there are townships that have made that decision that maybe they didn't feel like the revenue was enough to justify taking on that issue. So, but here's a slide from last week that shows the current fee for a passenger vehicle in the different jurisdictions. So there's a $5 township fee for Berlin, Brown, Genoa, Harlem, Liberty, Orange, Porter, and Trenton townships.
So the large population townships have all enacted them, the 3 big ones in the south. Liberty, Orange, and Genoa.
Yes, they have, yeah. And that revenue, 100% goes to those townships.
And it's also required to be dedicated to the roads.
It is. It's subject to the same Ohio constitutional provision on how that money could be spent.
I know that one resident had emailed us, and I believe I forwarded that email. And some of the information that he was asking about, you'd already explained in the PowerPoint. I think if we sent him that PowerPoint, were there any other points that you'd like to address, though?
One of the points was about the weight enforcement. Was that the email you were talking about?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so our PowerPoint doesn't specifically address that and permit fees related to weight enforcement. One of the questions was whether the county has an active program of enforcing weight limits, and the answer is yes. The sheriff has
Okay.
has weight enforcement units that are on the road and on that task almost all the time. I know they get called off for special calls, but and that is funded by part of the motor vehicle fine money comes back to the county. Some of it goes to the law library. Some of it goes to the road budget. Years ago, we made the decision that money was better spent for weight enforcement. So a portion of the fine money actually goes to the sheriff's office to fund those deputies who are actively involved in weight enforcement, and they are very active. I think we probably have one of the most active programs, certainly for a county our size.
Sure.
That enforces the weight limit on overloaded and oversized vehicles.
He made a good point, because we certainly have a lot of trucks.
We do.
Big trucks.
But when we talk about these kind of things, the attention understandably goes to the pavement deterioration from vehicles and a discussion of vehicle size. And not to minimize that, because it's real, but it gets really real on really big vehicles. There's another side to it, that it costs us the same amount to keep the roads plowed for a Prius as it does for an 18-wheeler. It costs us the same amount of money to paint a center line and do pavement markings and keep signs in place, regardless of the size and weight of the vehicle, to keep the road size mowed, there are a number of functions associated with maintaining a roadway system to keep the drainage open and in place and working. All those things are really irrespective of the size of vehicles that are using our roadways. And
Well,
so,
time's also a factor, degradation over time, just the age of the roads.
absolutely. So the funding problem is not going to be solved by finding overweight vehicles, and the cost of maintaining our roadway doesn't disappear if overloaded vehicles disappear from our roadways. That's the point I'm trying to make. So is it a factor? Yes. Is it the biggest factor? Probably not. But it is a factor.
Well, and it's being followed up on,
Absolutely.
so that's very important.
And the most important, Sheriff Martin and I have had this discussion along with his weight enforcement deputies. The most important function they serve is deterrence, in terms of keeping the people that are loading vehicles understand there's a consequence to overloading vehicles and hopefully choose not to do that. It's not measured by how many fines we collect. It's measured by how many vehicles that end up complying with the law, because there's a consequence if they don't.
Could you follow up with that gentleman?
Yes, I just read that email this morning.
That'd be great.
So
That'd be
we'll send
great.
this presentation.
Okay,
And
super.
I'll offer that explanation as well.
Oh, great, thank you. Is there public comment? Yes, sir. If you could just approach the podium and give us your name and address.
John K. Hartman, 3554 Clarkshaw Road, Powell. I'm a resident of Liberty Township. I've served the past few years. I just concluded 5 years of service to Liberty Township, first on the Board of Zoning Appeals and then as an alternate on the Zoning Board. I would like to thank Mr. Bauserman for his thoughtful and conscientious service to our community. I've had several dealings and communications with him and his staff. They've all been very positive and very helpful, and we appreciate your public spirited matters on these matters. I think 50 and 100 years from now, people will look back at the Sawmill Parkway as a brilliant transportation conveyance that will drive all manner of mostly positive things, maybe a little congestion along the way in the community. I would also like to thank the county commissioners for your service and for your availability and communication. Any dealings that I've had with the county commissioners in the 10-plus years that we've lived in Delaware County have all been positive. I particularly thank Jennifer Walraven for communication with regard to matters of ditch and other things that are taking place. And any questions I've ever had have been answered and answered in full. I'd also like to compliment you for televising your meetings and making those tapes available after the meetings for people to watch. I might like a little more fast-moving action when I watch television. Maybe some basketballs or maybe some lively political discussion, but the fact that it's out there, the fact that it's available for the public, I think is very positive. And as one with a background in journalism, I'm very grateful that you're making things accessible and that you've made this very easy for me to come in and talk to you this morning. I will try to be very brief, like a good lead paragraph in a newspaper article. Friend, Mr. Merrill, the former newspaper publisher. I like to think about what are the principles that we should make decisions as public officials about. One of those principles, I think, is trying to do the will of the majority of the people that we serve. Another one of those principles that I think we need to think about is what should our policy be on tax or fee increases. I happen to believe that the best policy on tax and fee increases is to ask the public to decide. I happen to believe that taxes should not be increased without a vote of the public. And so even though I see a very logical reason that additional money might be needed for our transportation needs, I also believe that it would be beneficial to the community and to our fellow citizens if we would give them that opportunity to vote on whether or not they want to pay an additional amount of money for their driving privileges, for their auto licenses. Recently in the city of Powell, there was a measure on the ballot to provide additional money, tax increase for roads and infrastructure. It was not successful, and I know many of the leaders in Powell were disappointed with that result. But nonetheless, they accepted that result, and they're going forward and trying to make the best decision in terms of serving the needs of their community. We also know that in 2017, the residents of Powell and Liberty Township voted by 75% to fund their fire and EMS service for the next 5 years. I would like to ask you to consider, as we think about these two issues, I would like you to consider that your involvement in the decision-making process for the residents of Powell and Liberty Township might not be in concert with the majority will of the 30,000 people that live in those two communities with regard to their fire and EMS service. And if you believe that the role of government is to provide, to respect the will of the majority of the public, I would also like to call to your attention that the most recent survey of residents of Powell, which accounts for 13,000 of those 30,000 people, the recent survey that they take every 2 years showed that more than 80% of the residents of Powell support the Liberty Township Fire Department and EMS services and are satisfied and happy with those services. So, again, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you. I know you have challenging jobs and daunting responsibilities. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. If you wish to follow up with me at this time, I'd be happy to continue to respond. Otherwise, I will thank you again for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Mr. Blaney.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Pat Blaney. I'm a resident of Genoa Township. I'm also a civil engineer. Been involved the majority of my career in transportation-related projects. I also had the opportunity to serve many years as a Genoa Township trustee, and we did implement a 1% tax during my first term as trustee to support our roads, and we did implement the $5 fee during that tenure as well. I also had the opportunity when I was president of the Ohio chapter of the American Council of Engineering Companies to lobby for T21 in Washington, D.C. Throughout all this, there has been a constant struggle to obtain funds on the federal, state, and local level, and it's always been deficient in the way we fund our transportation systems. And the result of it is that when communities such as ours have the opportunity to do some of the funding themselves, it has been well received. I mean, our levy passed in Genoa Township. It's been supported continuously since the early 80s. I had the privilege of serving on the committee that put the 0.5% sales tax on the ballot here in Delaware County. It was supported by the majority of residents. So I feel we've always had the support of the residents in Delaware County as they understand the shortfall in state and federal funding to help us with our road structures. So I would say that I'm pleased that the state legislature did give us the opportunity to help ourselves maintain and develop our roadway system to meet the future needs of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, sir.
Good morning. My name is Ron Maddox. I'm a resident of Harlem Township, Covan Drive. And like Pat, I am also an engineer. I've spent the last 40 years in transportation, doing roads, bridges, transportation studies. And I'm also here to support the fee. I've seen the presentation that Chris has done, and he's done an excellent job of presenting the fees, the local, state, federal funding crisis that we've had. And he's very succinct and very correct in the lack of funding that we've had overall. One of the questions that came up Thursday was, this fee is just $5. Well, what about the folks that have hybrids and electric cars? I happen to be one of the folks that drive a hybrid. And I didn't do that because I'm going to try to miss out on paying for my share of the road. I think it's very important. One of the slides that Chris presented was the examples of the different vehicles and what the actual cost is per year for those vehicles. Mine's about $160 a year. I spend more than that on my phone. And if I was to think of whether or not I wanted my phone or to be able to drive, it would be a no-brainer. So, and in other states, as a matter of information, Indiana, just in last year, passed legislation that they increased their vehicle license fee. They bumped it to 15 for each vehicle. For hybrids, they bumped it up to an additional 50.
Oh, really?
And then for full electrics, they went to an additional $150.
Really? Wow.
Plus, they increased their gas tax by 10 cents. And there were several other details about that. But yeah, they recognize that they're wanting to fairly spread out the cost amongst all users. And I agree with that. I'm more than willing to pay the $50 on my vehicle to be able to generate the funds necessary for the projects. One thing I wanted to really make clear, the projects that Chris has done over the years, and he's done a great job with his staff, we get into congestion, we get into development, but the key factor that you'll see at the federal, state, local level is that the basis of a lot of those are safety. It's a matter of when the congestion starts happening, accidents, crashes start happening, and people get hurt. And an example of that, in my area, at Red Bank Road and Smothers Road, it used to be a single or two-way stop, and Smothers Road would go through. In the 30 years that I've lived on Covan Drive, I've heard multiple accidents from my house, and I knew exactly what was happening, a major crash. It was a T-bone. Somebody got hurt. And as the stewards of the city or the county roads, they're very aware of the crashes. And since there's not enough funding for all projects, when a road is identified as being a high crash area, it comes up in the list. Our intersection came up in the list, but it never got funded because it just wasn't as high as some of the others until there was a fatal crash. And today, we have a roundabout because of that fatal crash. And I feel that if we were to recognize that a lot of the work that we do is safety related and drives what we are doing, that the funds are more than worth having that out there. And I would just like to say I appreciate what the county's done. I've worked with a lot of the other 88 counties across the state, and Delaware County has it together. They know what they're doing, and they get focused, and they achieve a lot of work. So, thank you.
Thank you. I know just that intersection. I went through it this morning. I went through the roundabout, but I know I almost had someone hit me at that intersection of Red Bank and Smothers, so I'm very happy to have the roundabout. But thank you for your experience there. Would anyone else like to speak? Mr. Holman, hello.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Tom Homan, and I'm the City Manager for the City of Delaware, a position I've held since 1999. First off, I'd like to recognize the strong working partnership we have with Delaware County and the County Engineer's Office. The partnership has resulted in county funding for a number of resurfacing projects through the OPWC program and, of course, Sawmill Parkway, which was really a milestone in city-county cooperation. County Engineer Bauserman did an excellent job on Friday in explaining the history of the permissive license fee and the important role it plays in transportation funding at the state, county, municipal, and township level. The city has been advocating a change to the permissive authority statute since 2011. This was shortly after the massive cuts to the local government program announced by Governor Kasich in 2009. In fact, in testimony to the Senate Finance Committee in 2011, I suggested that this would be one way for local governments to mitigate the effects of these cuts, pointing out, as County Engineer Bauserman did, that it really has not changed since 1988. And that was the ability of the state government to provide that local authority. In the ensuing years, I was part of a regional and statewide effort which included OML, MORPC, the County Engineers Association, the County Commissioners Association, and the Township Association, to change the statute to provide that local authority. That happened in 2018 and was a major victory for Ohio's 88 counties. My hope is that the same permissive authority change be made in 2019 and extended to townships, villages, and cities. At this point, I think the General Assembly got it 33 1/3 part right. The other 2/3 are the townships and the cities that were left out of that equation. Because as you know, we in Powell and Westerville and Columbus are at our maximum permissive authority. While the city supports this additional funding, we'd like to better understand how it might be used to augment the county's OPWC grant matching program, participation in the TID, in regionally significant projects such as the Point. One of the things that we have talked about with the county really since our discussion regarding the Point was whether the consideration might be given to a grant program that would provide assistance for regionally significant projects. Not just the Point, but other projects as they might come up in the county that have been identified by MORPC through their competitive advantage program that have regional significance, that provide important advantages to commerce. And so that's really one of the areas that we would ask that there be some additional discussion on. And I understand through County Engineer Boserman's statements this morning that he's talking about that consideration is being given. So that's something we'd like to understand a little better and have some discussion about. The county already has the authority under 45.0402 to enact an additional $5. If you went that route, however, it wouldn't apply to the cities that are at their maximum. So that authority exists today, but obviously you wouldn't yield the same dollar amount that you would countywide. So that should be, I think, just thought about in terms of what you're looking at today versus the authority that you already have under 02. You have until July 1st to act on the resolution before you, and I guess I would ask between now and then if there might be some dialogue, some conversation regarding what County Engineer Boserman discussed earlier today and what I brought up in terms of the OPWC grant program and participation in the TID projects, the Transportation Improvement District, and other regionally significant projects. I thank you for the time that you've given me this morning in the City of Delaware in reviewing what I think is a very, very important program and one obviously that we've been advocating since 2011. So hopefully we'll be able to take advantage of something sometime next year if the $5 permissive fee is extended to cities. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Charles Miley, Brown Township, 4364 Veely Road. I just wanted to say Brown Township did enact that license fee. I've been trustee 20 years, and they enacted it before I was trustee. We also have a road levy, and that road levy brings in about $80,000 a year, but we spend $200,000, between $150,000 and $200,000 each year maintaining our township roads. Over those 20 years, we've applied to OPWC several times, and we've been successful 5 times in getting funding. Well, each time the engineer's office has provided $50,000. That's $250,000 in matching funds that we've gotten from the engineer's office. He has a staff that helps us with all those things, which I don't think anybody's mentioned that, but they go out on the roads with us and inspect us and give us advice and stuff like that. So that's a cost that we get assistance at that people don't really understand or realize. Every spring, he has a meeting with all the townships to come in and talk about road maintenance. And he says, you can spend pennies now or dollars later. And our roads are kind of getting to the point where they're falling apart. You need to spend pennies on them now rather than dollars later. And you need that source of funding, and it's not coming from the federal government, and it's not coming from the state government, although I have high hopes that Governor DeWine will address that issue. But I just wanted to say how much help it has been with the engineer's office and how much just Brown Township, one of the northern counties, has benefited. On that thing, it said Trenton and Porter and Brown all have the permissive fee. You know, so there are some in the northern part that have permissive fees. I myself have 5 trailers, and in our family, we've got 9 trucks. So, you know, I don't mind paying that extra $5 because I know our roads are better. When you get to some of the county lines, you can see a noticeable difference in the roadways. So I just want to give my appreciation to the engineer's office. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miley. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay. What is the pleasure of the board? A vote?
Well, we can
We have to
close the
close the
hearing.
hearing. Okay, and then we would pass, okay.
Resolution number 19-76, in the matter of closing public hearing number 2 for consideration of levying the tax upon motor vehicle registrations authorized under Ohio Revised Code, Section 4504.24.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion vote.
Vote on motion 19-76, Mr. Benton.
Aye.
Mr. Merrill.
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis.
Aye.
Your
Thank
hearing
you.
is-
Okay. Is there a resolution to proceed or more discussion?
Well, let me make a few comments, and
Sure.
maybe that would be better than... First of all, I want to thank everybody that came here today, and everybody came here last Thursday to share your comments. We really value that. We're fortunate enough to live in a county that has, I'm going to say, good roads. They can always be better, but you drive outside this county, they can be worse, as many of you have experienced. This $1.1 million is not going to solve all of our problems. The concern is that if we don't do something, we don't see on the horizon anything that's going to help us. So if we don't do something, as little as 1.1 million will bring, it helps somewhat. I think we take for granted our roads. I've asked on more than one occasions about the bridges in our county. Long before I was in this position, decisions were made, we're going to get these bridges up to above standards. And Chris, you always have to refresh me on the numbers, but I think we still have a few to go, but we've done well over 100. Is that accurate?
Well over 100. We have probably less than 10 bridges that are classified as deficient. And they're really deficient, not because they're structurally unsafe, because they are narrow, or on a very low volume road, or have some design that doesn't meet current standards. So our bridge system has been excellent.
So the things that we sometimes forget, or we don't notice, or we don't observe, is the things that we take for granted. Now, many of those bridges I've never been on, and I never will drive on them. But for the safety and the well-being of the citizens in our county, it's good that somebody is taking care of those bridges for the people who live in that area or will be driving through that area. So a comment was made about, now, I haven't lived in Oklahoma since '86, but when I lived in Oklahoma, I have no reason to believe it's changed. Your registration fees, your yearly tag fees is based on the value of your vehicle. So we weren't talking $50 a year. You're talking, and again, I'm doing this from memory, so I'll stand corrected if I'm wrong today. Several $100s in some cases based on the value of your vehicle. And if I recall, after 10 years, it flatlined. And, but the first 10 years, that was how so when we look at $50 or $60, although $50 or $60 is important, in this case, additional $5, nobody wants to pay more, but someone mentioned their phones costing more than what they'd be paying on this. So this is an opportunity to do a couple of things, to get more money to the townships and to the cities. It's an opportunity to provide some funding for the transportation district that we put in place, and that may well address some of the issues that Mr. Holman mentioned. But we have to do something, and I think our residents, if we don't do what we can do based on the law today, we're being a little negligent. Again, 1.1 million is not going to solve a major funding issue. We have talked about, so it was mentioned about large, significant, we have talked about the Big Walnut area and the county's willingness to put substantial funding in that will benefit everyone. So that is a conversation we have had. It's a conversation that we had many years ago on the Sawmill Parkway, which, Tom, you know, I was actively involved in that. Chris and I worked very hard to get that finished. And it was mentioned by a couple of people about, Mr. Hartman, I think you mentioned about that. That was not an easy project to do, but we got it done because we thought it was important. And so I could go down the list of comments that were made, and I'm going to not do that. We did talk about increasing, possibly, based on a comment I made, and there's been conversations after, and it was reinforced today, helping the townships a little more. I'm not sure I understood your math when you said 2 to 1, $75,000 when it's currently 50, but that's not important today. The point that you were trying to make was trying to get more funds out there for the benefit of the townships and the cities involved as well that are taking advantage of that program. So from where I'm sitting, I think if we do our job, it requires me to support this today, and I would vote in favor if resolutions go. That's all I have.
Commissioner Benton?
Yeah, Commissioner Merrill covered a lot of the points I was going to cover, so I won't try to repeat them, but the big point I want to make is that transportation funding is a major issue, statewide and nationally, as well as locally. And this is just one item of many that need to be addressed to truly provide adequate funding for the transportation. Some of the others that I would really like to see have happen is at the state and the federal level, policy decisions, that would enable us to stretch our dollars further, such as making prevailing wage optional, and just simply providing additional funding, both at the state and federal level. Because, again, we are spending, I think, somewhere in the range of $5 million a year more than what we're bringing in. I think is probably a rough number, Chris, is in that range, $5 to $6 million a year more. So this would reduce that number by $1 million, but it still is a big gap, that we have on the funding that is coming in versus what we're spending in the plan and the plans for the future. So it helps, but it certainly isn't going to solve it. So we do need policy decisions at the state and federal level. We need additional funding as well. And just one of the topics that we discussed at the legislative meeting on Friday with Representative Carfagna and Senator Brenner was electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, because they are not paying the same as gas-powered vehicles. And that's just, unfairly burdening the gas-powered vehicles. So they're aware of it. Nobody talked about Indiana, so that's an interesting development that Indiana has addressed it, because I know they're concerned about political pushback, about raising the EV and hybrid registration fee. But anyway, and the TID is another vehicle. We've done a lot of things that we can do. This is kind of the last piece of what we can do without some policy and funding initiatives at the federal and state level. And it will help a little bit, but it's not going to be the answer. And we'll commit certainly to looking at helping the townships and the cities, with some sharing program. So anyway, again, I support it as well. And I like to think of it more as a user fee than a tax, kind of like the sewer department. They raise their rates, our code compliance raises rates periodically, the courts raise their fees, the sheriffs and so on. So again, it's more of a user fee that is just put right back into the roads that help the residents of the county. So that's where I am.
And I also support the increase for the reasons that have been outlined by Engineer Bauserman and my fellow commissioners. It's been 30 years, and Specifically, this extra will go towards road maintenance, and we have to keep our roads in good shape. It's an extra tool that the legislature has given us, and we are acting as a legislative body under our purview in order to do this. So if you would read the resolution.
Resolution number 19-77, in the matter of adopting a resolution to levy an additional motor vehicle tax upon motor vehicle registrations authorized under Ohio Revised Code, Section 4504.24.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Vote?
Vote on motion 19-77. Mr. Merrill?
Aye.
Mr. Benton?
Aye.
Mrs. Lewis?
Aye. We have no need for executive session.
Not today.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for